सहनौ भुनक्तु सह वीर्यं करवावहै तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै। ओम शांति शांति शांति। समस्त जन कल्याणे निरतं करुणामयं नमामि चिन्मयं देवं सद्गुरुं ब्रह्मविद्वरम्। Salutations to all. First two lessons when we have covered. Last lesson we saw about Anubandha Chatushtaya. So Anubandha Chatushtaya, what are the four? Adhikari, Vishaya, Praveda. So these four are applicable to any text. And why should we know these four? Before we study the text, we should know, because are we eligible for it? Will we benefit? What is the objective? What is the subject matter? And what is the connection between the text and the subject matter? So that must be clear to us. Now the Adhikari part is going to be explained. Who is an Adhikari? Last time we saw Adhikari means a qualified student. So this class we will see about Sadhan Chatushtaya. Four-fold qualifications. Some of you who have studied Vedanta may know. These are very clearly given out in many of the Prakarana Granthas like Tattvabodh, Vivek Chudamani. So, what are these four? Tell somebody's phone. If you don't know, please tell your neighbor. Because it takes time to build the thought process and then it just gets disturbed. So, who is an Adhikari? So, any success which we want, there is a qualification that is very, very important. If I want to win in an Olympics, let us say athletic event, I need a proper physical qualification. Even to compete in Olympics, I must qualify. Qualifiers are kept. So qualification is extremely important, and the greater, the subtler the field is, the greater the qualification required. So in terms of qualification, what is it? It must be knowledge and then even experience, both. So the knowledge of medicine as well as the practical experience makes that person a well-qualified doctor, not just the knowledge part of it. So when one actually is doing practicals, so even in the training, there will be theory plus the practicals. Then that person becomes qualified, and then as the person practices, more experience comes, knowledge also gets more refined, so that person is a very well-qualified doctor. Same thing applies in all fields. Especially in spiritual life, the qualification becomes more and more subtler. As the field becomes more and more subtler, the nature of work becomes more and more difficult. One has to be properly qualified. Last time, if you remember, we saw that knower, when he contacts the known, knowledge has to arise. But if knower is contacting the known and knowledge is not rising, the problem is where? On the knower. Because the known exists and the known is in a proper condition, then but essentially it is these two only. What is the qualification required to know the truth? The mind must be available. Then the mind, when it is available, means what? The mind must be purified and the mind must be single-pointed. Such a mind is a qualified mind. With such a mind, when I listen to Vedanta, when the mind is pure and single-pointed, knowledge happens immediate, then and there. Realization will be instant. So now such a person is called as an Adhikari who has these two main qualifications. Now these two main qualifications are elaborated as Sadhan Chatushtaya. Sadhan means a means. Sadhya means the goal. Sadhan or sadhana means the means. And sadhak means the seeker. Those are called Adhikari here. And Siddha is somebody who has reached the goal. So what are those fourfold qualifications? Vivek, discrimination. Vairagya, dispassion. Shatka Sampatti, sixfold wealth, and Mumukshutva, desire for liberation, intense desire for liberation. So don't mix up Anubandha Chatushtaya and Sadhana Chatushtaya. Okay. Just because the word Chatushtaya is there, a lot of 4 will come in our Vedantic stocks of course. There are 4 states of consciousness also, waking, dream, deep sleep, and Turiya. 4. Like that, there will be many 4 will keep coming. So this is Sadhana Chatushtaya. Now each one we will see. Vivek. Vivek literally means discrimination. So discrimination is, when is discrimination required? When 2 things have got mixed up, then discrimination is required. You have to separate. Those 2 things are what? Example, let us say rice and stone. They're 2 different things. They got mixed up. So then what do we do? Remove the stone and then use the rice for boiling. So in that way, now you have to tell me the difference between these 3 examples. What is the difference? Is there any difference?
Milk and water we cannot water is difficult to segregate from.
No different, that's the same in all. I'm saying each example has a difference. Degrees of difference.
More gross.
Understanding, ability,
Milk and water we cannot
difficulties. Milk and water we cannot
we
see.
cannot discriminate.
Okay.
Self is permanent. Everything else is.
Someone said first one is solid, second one is liquid. Third one is not gas. One may think like that. Rice and stone is very easy because they are of 2 different nature, very clearly evident. But milk and water is similar, which has mixed up. So sometimes one will not even know that the milk is mixed with water. It is said that swan is able to segregate by drinking only the milk and leaving the water. Hamsa Pakshi. But the self and the body, see, in case of rice and stone, we know there are 2, so you can separate. In case of milk and water, sometimes we don't know there are 2. But in case of self and the body, there is no knowledge only that self exists. One thing, body is and I am that body, over. Where is the question of discrimination arises? When I don't even know that there is a self, how will I discriminate? So first qualification is discrimination to at least make us aware that there are 2 which has got mixed up. There is not 1. Because one thing, that body is functioning on its own. Maximum what one thinks, the breathing is making the body alive. When the breathing stops, body dies. But till one comes to Vedanta, one doesn't realize that there is not the breath which actually sustains the body. Breath is also sustained by something else. So self and the body are 2, but not known as 2. And so that discrimination has to happen between that which is permanent and that which is temporary. So Vivek is this discrimination. It's the faculty of the intellect. Can plants and animals do discrimination or only human beings can do?
They have limited.
Discrimination only human beings can do. How many say only human beings can do? Animals don't discriminate. What to eat, what not to eat, who is my friend, who is not my friend. That is what it is, not discrimination or differentiation. I didn't ask you discrimination between Atma and Anatma. It was a general question saying, can plants, animals, birds discriminate or not? They can discriminate. Then what is the glory of human beings? Suddenly one feels horrific. See, this discrimination of noble, ignoble, pleasure, pain, honor, dishonor, that humans alone can do. Pleasure and pain they will also feel. They will feel. But they can't change that. If it is paining, it is paining. Emotional state they cannot change because it's instinct oriented. And many times human beings use discrimination for wrong purpose also. Discrimination on the basis of so many caste, creed, community, gender, nationality, go on discriminating. And use that discrimination for what? Oppression, suffering, torture. After this. So Vedantic discrimination is between permanent and ephemeral. And what is that? Understanding that there is Brahman which is real, everything else is temporary. We'll see the definition in Sanskrit one. So this is called subtle discrimination. This only a human being can do. This is called Brahma Vivek. There are different categories of Vivek also. One is called Dharma Vivek, other is called Brahma Vivek. Dharma Vivek is what is right, what is wrong. What is the means and what is the goal. What is a part, what is the whole. What is good, what is pleasant. These are all called Dharma Vivek. Brahma Vivek means this, Atma, Anatma. What is the self, what is the not self. What is permanent, what is temporary. That is called Brahma Vivek. Now this Vivek only human beings can do. Animals can do the grosser form of Vivek. Heat, cold, joy, sorrow. Who is their offspring, who is not. But all this is based on what? Their instinct. It is pre-programmed. So if a human being does not do Dharma Vivek or Brahma Vivek, then human being is not using the potential of the Buddhi. And one important aspect to know is if I cannot do Dharma Vivek, I will not realize Brahman. I cannot do Brahma Vivek. If I don't know what is right and wrong, I cannot live by what is right. I cannot do permanent and temporary discrimination. Because the Buddhi is so gross that it can't even do right and wrong discrimination. How will it do discrimination of what is Atma and what is Anatma? What is Nitya and what is Anitya? It's not possible. Shreyas and Prayas Vivek. If I don't do between good and pleasant, so that what is pleasant, if it is not good for me, I should be able to let it go. All that makes the Buddhi sharp. If that Buddhi is made sharp with Dharma Vivek, then it can do Brahma Vivek properly. Otherwise, it will remain intellectual understanding. Okay, there is something permanent and everything else is perishable. It will not give the result. The result of Vivek is Vairagya. If I do Vivek properly, Vairagya has to be born. In our own daily life, we have done that or not. So many times. Today we are very clear that toys of childhood, they don't have any joy. Vivek has been done, so we have enough Vairagya from that. Does anybody run behind toys of childhood? Toy cars, toy marbles, dolls. Nobody runs. Because Vivek has been done. And the moment Vivek is done, the result will be Vairagya. So how to know whether my Vivek is active, Vivek is proper or not? It will lead to Vairagya. What is Vairagya we will see as we go along. But this first quality Vivek is actually the foundation of all the other three. If the other three are weak, it will be one of the reasons will be the Vivek is weak. So the Vivek has to be constantly strengthened. So what is the definition given in your course material? The definition is given from Tattva Bodh. So let us read that. Nityam Vastu Ekam Brahma Tad Vyatiriktam Sarvam Anityam. What does it mean? Nityam Vastu. Vastu here means that which is not just an object, means the eternal truth. Vastu literally means the truth. Nityam Vastu Ekam Brahma. That which is permanent is only one, Brahman. Tad Anyat. Tad Vyatiriktam Sarvam Anityam. Apart from that, everything else is Anitya, is ephemeral. Now suddenly this new term has come. Brahman, what is Brahman? Brahman means that consciousness or truth. That which is the biggest, literally etymologically Brahman means the biggest. And what is that which is the biggest? Is that which is infinite, consciousness. So Vivek is the discrimination that there is one truth which is real, everything else is ephemeral. It is unreal. To reach this state is the goal, but at least to know that there are two, that is this first qualification, discrimination. So when we look around, what do we find? Everything is changing all around us. Before we come to Vedanta, this realization also is not strong, that everything is changing. That which has a beginning will have an end. So, meaning it is there for a short time. We see beginning and we see the end, but in between also it is constantly changing. That's the definition of the word Jagat. Jagat means Jayate, born. Gachati, gone. Born, gone. Born, gone. In between, Tishtati iva, as though it stays. We live for 60 years, 80 years, 100 years. Before that, we were not existing. After that, we will not exist in terms of the body. So it is born, it stays for some time, goes. Even while it stays for some time, it is constantly changing. Every second, so many cells are born, so many are dying. So this constant change, when we look around, that change, that's why human being resists change, because change is actually not our nature. That's the nature of the body, mind, intellect, the world outside. Everything changes around us. Objects change, people change, situations change, body changes, thoughts change, mind changes, feelings change, everything changes. What is that which does not change? Is there anything that does not change? That we have learned in Vedanta, that's why we are saying. But otherwise, actually, if we see around, everything is only changing. And so, Einstein said everything is in a state of flux. It goes on changing. And hence, what does not change in the world is change alone, is changeless in that sense. That continuous change is a constant. It goes on changing. It is called drashta nashta svabhava. Even as I see, it is changing. But my limitation of the senses, I see as though it is not changing. It's so amazing. I don't know medically how it works, but I find it amazing. 7 years, every 7 years we have a new body. All cells in the body have changed. But our appearance remains similar. Luckily. Otherwise, every 7 years, who this person, how the person looks, we don't know. By the time we get used to that person, again that person changes. Some reason you may give medically, this disease happens, whatever, but it's very fascinating. Every 7 years, whole new body one has. All the cells in the body change. But still it looks same. So everything goes on changing. So Gurudev gives a very nice, one small video about this change. That how do I live in this world? See, change can be quite disturbing. There's so many things are going on changing. There's no steadiness. By the time you build something, it's gone. It breaks. So then how do I live in this world? What attitude should I live in this world when so many things are changing? People, we think in a particular way, somebody is, and we enter into some relationship or a partnership or whatever it is. And then that person changes. Then we say, I didn't know this side of the person. So when people change, situations change, objects change, we ourselves change. Sometimes it is very unnerving that, how to live in this world. There's nothing to hold on to. So one attitude with which we can live in this world, Gurudev speaks about that.
That's my friend. All the VMI are constantly changing. OET is constantly changing. Between these two changing factors, you stupidly come to believe that a certain condition can be created in my mind. But please, nothing will happen. Then I got some money in the bank. Everybody. So then the great Rishi said, I can understand the animals and the mineral world, the plant kingdom, feeling that way. You man who's got capacity to think, why don't you analyze and understand that this nothing is permanent, this is rhythm of time, everything is changing, play with the change. Just as in the dance hall, you enjoy the dance. Why? It's constant movement. Dance is not standing in. So she steps on you and you step on her. Enjoy! But nobody will fall down because each is hanging on to the other. Similarly, hang on to the world outside. Get thrust, never mind. Enjoy. In a sport, in a game, don't you think you are panting, you are getting exhausted, and yet you say that, I enjoy beautiful game. Beautiful game. You physically suffer, but mentally you enjoy. Why? It's a sport, it's a game. I want it. The same way. Endure. Live through the joys and sorrows of life, but consider it as a sport. Why? You are not expecting anything permanent. I know that they will not be permanent. My husband is not permanent, my wife is not permanent, my children are not permanent, my business is not permanent. Nothing is permanent. But when it is there, I play. When it is not there, I play. Just because I am losing, is there a sportsman who has never continued the sport? So when I lose, I say that. Beautiful stroke. Nice. And in case I win, I said, better luck next time. Today you are not in your mood. I know you will always beat me down, but better luck next time. Just called sportsmanship. So sometimes I win, sometimes I lose. But yeah, you will, unless you are lose somewhere else. Play the game till the end. So, the great Rishi said, why is it that these people, man, suffering until because of his ignorance? He refuses to make use of his intellectual capacity to analyze. He is very good in analyzing the outer world. Science, he progresses, but when he turns upon himself, he feels unhappy and incapacitated as he never turns his attention to it. Vimudha Adivasya. Visheshena Mudha. Supreme idiots never understand this way. Gita says, supreme idiot means not that you are incapable of wisdom, but you refuse to think. What can you do? You are so preoccupied with the world of seeking a permanent happiness amidst impermanent things. So fully engaged that you are not attention, you cannot be turned. when they have.
So that's the attitude. What is the attitude with which we live? Sportsmanship attitude. Things are changing. I can be nervous about it. I can be insecure about it. Or I can say, okay, this is the law. I play. The challenge in this comes when I'm attached to something and I don't want it to change. So detachment is a very important quality for that. But when I live in this world, I have to live with that attitude, expecting things will change. If they don't change, one should worry actually. Yesterday only I read one very nice quote on Instagram. There was a very nice quote. It said, "Don't worry if you fail. What you should be really worried about is if you are at the same level where you were last year. Meaning you have not changed, you have not grown in 1 year's time. If you are at the same level, then that is a worrisome fact. So one aspect is that when change is going around all around us, what is our attitude? Our attitude is I should be here with a sportsmanship spirit, live this life with full enthusiasm. And then think that is there something which is changeless?
Changeless.
It will be changeless. Somebody's mobile will continuously keep ringing throughout the whole session. Different people's mobiles will go on ringing. So now why do we say there is a changeless? The law is simple. If there is a change, we require a changeless substratum. What is the example? If the dancer is continuously dancing, the stage has to be constant. If a train is moving, the tracks have to be constant. If the movie is being projected, like this PPT is being projected, the screen has to be constant. The scenes keep on changing. So the very fact that change is perceived by us means that there is a changeless. In the world outside also. This whole creation which is constantly changing, there is a changeless factor. Till we come to Vedanta, we don't even know there is something called changeless. Outside as well as in us. Our own body, mind, intellect goes on changing. But what is that changeless factor in us? Vivek is to really know that. It is not to know, okay, there is some permanent there and some impermanent out there. No. In me, what is the permanent and what is the impermanent? It is for me. It is my personality. So Brahman or consciousness is the changeless substratum that transcends this world of objects and change. More about this is what the course will explain to us. But discrimination means the ability to see clearly that there is one changeless factor on which the whole change is happening, from which the creation arises, in which it stays, into which it goes back. Like how in the dreamer's mind, the dream world rises, stays and merges back. In the same way, what is that source of creation? From where it rises, it stays, into which it goes back. That is the changeless Brahman. And the beauty of Vedanta is what it is saying. That changeless Brahman, which is the source of the whole creation, is in our heart. So understanding this is the Vivek. That there is one changeless factor in me as well as in the world outside. Apart from what is not changing, apart from what is changing. First step is understanding. Then as we practice, we apply. When we realize the truth, then the experience comes. So actually the definition of Vivek which is given is the state of that realization. Nityam Vastu Ekam Brahma. That there is only one Brahman, everything else is ephemeral. It's actually the state of realization. But why is it given as a qualification? Because through that discrimination only I will even experience that state. Otherwise I will not even experience that state. So we should know that this is our absolute definition. Vivek, the definition given is an absolute definition. We have to adapt it to our qualification level. So Gurudev now speaks about that how there is a changeless. When we say that there is everything which is changing, Vedantic students' question will naturally be, or anybody's question will be, how do you prove that there is a changeless? We saw the logic behind it. But before we come to Vedanta, if somebody has to ask that prove what is changeless, how will one prove what is changeless? Because one doesn't see any example of changeless. You see how Gurudev explained this.
Change can be observed only with the reference to a changeless fact. In the middle of the Atlantic, when you are going in a boat, you don't know whether the boat is moving forward or not. Why? There is no point of reference with which I can know the change. But as it comes nearer the harbor, with reference to the buildings and the trees, I recognize, yeah, our boat is going very fast. I think it is too fast. Will they be able to control? With the reference. Is it not? All right. On any road in America, you stand there on the sidewalks and you watch traffic going both to the right and to the left. The traffic is ever in a state of flux, change. Who is recognized? The one who recognizes the change of the traffic must be you who is standing changeless on the sidewalk. Isn't it? If you yourself is in the system of change, you are in a car, and then you say that, no, I want to see my car going. The only method is open the door, jump out. See, the observer and the observed. That the body and the mind, the intellect and the world of objects, emotions and thoughts are all changing is observed by whom? By me. I am conscious of it. So the consciousness that is conscious of all the changes is permanent. Every bucket of water in a river is moving. The river is flowing. Who is doing it? I. When you are floating in the river, you know it. When you are sitting in the bed and watch, river is flowing by. The observer and the observed. What is the observer who is observing change? Everyone can come to a conclusion. Everything is changing. Yes. How do you know? Who knows it? The knower, the change cannot be in the system of change.
So that's an important point. The knower of the change cannot be in the system of the change. So in us there is one factor which is not involved in the BMI, which is why it knows the changes of the BMI. Like the screen is not involved in the scenes. It is uninvolved. That's why it is called witness. Witness is an uninvolved, unaffected observer. It's a sakshi. So in me there is one observer which goes on observing everything, which knows all the changes. Body went through changes. It was a baby, then it grew, then it became a child, then it became a teenager, it became a youth. The changes of the body, this observer is observing. Every minute, thoughts keep changing. That also the observer is observing. Otherwise, we will not know that our ideas change, our thoughts change, our feelings change. So, that is not involved in the body, mind and intellect. It is a different enlivener. That is a changeless factor. So now how to cultivate this vivek? Binu satsanga vivek na hoi, Rama kripa binu sulavana soi. One has to cultivate vivek by attending satsang, or satsang doesn't mean only a formal class. Company of seekers, great masters, reading certain books, reflecting, taking the name of the Lord. So many methods are there. What will connect me to Sat? Satsang literally means the song of Sat, the company of truth. So grace is required, punya is required. Both are very crucial. Grace is always there, but punya we have to do. Meritorious actions, selfless deeds, charity, helping people, selfless service, those things generate punya karma. And punya is the currency. Believe it or not. If you go to US, you will take dollars. If you go to America, Japan, what will you take? Yeah. If you go to Middle East somewhere, if you go to heaven, you should take punya and go. Whether you like it or not, it will come anyway. But that punya karma is very, very important. So when it is done, then satsang comes with that. And satsang is the means of awakening Vivek. Ratnakar realized when he was told that he has to face the consequences of his own karmas all by himself. He said, no, my family, I'm doing it for them, they will share. Naradji said, no, they won't share. He was very confident, no, they will share, I'm doing it for them only. He said, go and ask them. And when he went, what did they say? We will not take up. So he got a wake-up call that his Vivek started. He said, if I have to deal with all this, why am I doing all this? If I am alone in this journey, it is my own karmas, I only have to face. So he didn't ask Naradji that, Naradji, let us have some understanding between us. Whatever I earn by looting, killing, plundering, I'll give you 30% of that. Corporate social responsibility. CSR. He said, you please tell me how do I transform my mind? And he changed. He realized that Ram alone is the factor which is real, everything else is perishing. He held on to that and he was not even able to say Ram. So what was he saying? Mara. He starts saying Ram, it becomes Mara because his tendencies are so violent. So Naradji said, it's okay, say Mara. But that grace of the Lord, blessings of that Mahatma like Naradji, and the Purusharth of that individual, he transformed. So satsang is like that. It can be one talk, it can be one statement, it can be one quote somewhere one reads. It can awaken Vivek in us. One experience one goes through. So first method is satsang. So what should one do? Never underestimate the power of a satsang. And never ignore satsang. If satsang is coming, grab it. So many people ignore satsang. Because the priority in life is for something else. So what does our mind do? After everything else is done, then free time is there, then I will enroll for satsang. It should be the other way. First satsang, then the rest of the time do whatever else. Because what is the practical benefit or practical application of this? When we say there is only one changeless truth, we want permanent happiness which is changeless. That which will lead me to that, should I not hold on to that first? As Gurudev said, why does man run behind the impermanent? Wanting a permanent happiness is chasing the impermanent. So if expectations are false, disappointment is natural. If I want permanent happiness, I have to seek in that which is permanent. That's basic common sense. But why am I running behind? Because of my past habit, force of karma. Hence satsang. And when one is in satsang, what should one do? Be fully here. 1 hour, 1.5 hours. Janak Maharaj was sitting in satsang, Mithila was as though on fire and he didn't budge. Sadhus ran to protect their 2 langotis which are there in the kutia. That was his detachment. I'm not saying he was indifferent to his duty, but when you are in satsang, Bhagavan and that topic of satsang is everything. The rest of it is Tulsidas said, Sata Hari Bhajana Jagat Sav Sapna. Satya is only Hari Bhajan. Rest of it is all Sapna. It doesn't exist also. And that to realize that we are sitting in the class. With the fact that phone is real except at the world. World is unreal except my phone. So satsang, very, very important. Second aspect is regular study and reflection. The more I reflect upon it, what is real, what is unreal. You know, in goal setting workshop, they will always say, every morning get up and visualize your goal. Read a goal statement, write a goal statement. This is my goal statement. I want to achieve this and this by such and such time. And what should be your goal statement? It should be a smart goal. Specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, time bound. So we can do in spiritual life also. This is what Vivek is that only. Every day get up in the morning, first thing what to do, what is my goal of life? Think about that first. So your exercise for this week is make your goal statement. What is your goal? I'm not saying everybody's goal may be moksha. People may have different goals. But what is my goal? And that second aspect of that goal is my goal must be emotionally compelling to me. It's not an intellectual goal alone. Emotionally compelling goal, because then I have a deep demand for it, emotional level. So I will work towards it. If it's only some intellectual goal, after some time I will not even bother about it. Because the feeling is not backing it up. It may be a material goal, it may be a spiritual goal, but you have to write it. And how do you write it? It should be specific. Don't say, I want realization. It's very vague. Specifically, one has to write that I want to realize the self where I know my true nature or whatever. I'm not going to give you the answer. You have to write your goal. Specific. It should be measurable. How to measure something? In the worldly goal, there is measurable. Targets are put, numbers are there. Suppose if you say, I want to lose weight, that's a very ambiguous goal. If you say, I want to lose weight 5 kilos, then that's more specific and measurable. Suppose you say, I want to be fit, then it's an ambiguous goal. You say, I want to lose weight is specific goal. I want to lose 5 kilos, specific and measurable. And it should be achievable. Don't say, I want to lose 10 kilos in 10 days. Swamiji, that is possible actually. You don't know. Liposuction. 10 kilos gone. I say. Or best is cut the stomach size. What is it called? Bariatric surgery. Stomach size ko chota kar. Whatever. I'm saying it should be achievable. Do you believe moksha is achievable? Yes. So then write. Because many times people write goals which they know are not achievable. And then the feeling doesn't come for it. So smart means specific, measurable, achievable. Then realistic. Time bound. By what time? You say, Swamiji, it takes many, many lives actually. When we come to fourth qualification, we will see intense desire for liberation. I want liberation here and now. That is called mumukshutva. So if you can put a certain number of years to it, great. If you can't put years to it, at least put this lifetime. Vivekananda realized in 2 years' time. Nisargadatta Maharaj in 2 years' time. Gurudeva was with his Guru for 2 years. So we should put some timeline. If 2 is difficult, put 1 0 at least next to it. 20 years. Don't say I'll add 1 more 0 to it. Put some time. So specific, measurable, achievable, realistic and time bound. Every day get up and read that goal. What happens with that? The mind remains focused. So regular study and reflection. Third is increase sattva guna. If discrimination, we want to make it more and more subtler, sattva guna must keep increasing. On the Google Drive, I will put one document, which are 10 steps, 10 aspects of life. If you change into sattvic, mind will become full of sattva guna. Food, agama, scripture, what we read must be sattvic. Apa, water, what we eat and drink must be sattvic. Praja, what kind of company we keep, company must be sattvic. Agama, apa, praja, desha, what type of places do I visit? If I want sattva guna to increase, I must visit more sattvic places. See, actually this applies, these 10 aspects. If I increase rajoguna in these 10 aspects, my life will become rajasic. If a person is tamasic, to that person we want to make them dynamic, we have to make these 10 factors rajasic factors. Then that person will become dynamic. But from rajoguna, when I want to go to sattva, then I have to make these 10 factors into sattvic. So first is scripture, means what I learn, what I read, what I take in, agama. Apa, food and water, sattvic food, proper water. Agama, apa, praja, company that I keep. Desha, what type of places do I visit? Kala is time. When sattva guna is maximum in the atmosphere, at that time I should do sattvic things. Early morning, sattva guna is more. So do all the meditation, reflection, creative thinking, all that in the morning time. Daytime is rajo guna, so do work. Night time is tamo guna, so go to sleep. Many times our cycle is old. Such people are called nishachar. Those who are keeping awake in the night, sleeping in the day. Our body cycle also is not made according to that. Body cycle is made according to the sun. So agama, apa, praja, desha, kala, karma. Are my actions sattvic or not? Or am I doing rajasic action? So action may be rajasic but done with the sattvic bhav. Or action itself is sattvic, like puja, japa is sattvic karma. And my daily duties that I do is rajasic karma but dedicated to the Lord. That becomes sattvic. Kala karma. Janma. What is my initiation? Initiation means, am I being initiated into inspiring things, noble things, sattvic things? Or people are initiating me into rajasic things through comparison, through insecurity, through jealousy, or into tamasic things, into destructive activities. Kala karma, janmacha. Then dhyanam, what is my focus? Meaning, what is my goal? Is my goal sattvic or not? And samskara. Kala karma cha janma cha, dhyanam mantra uta samskara. Samskara is, mantra is my mantra which I repeat. It can be a mission statement, it can be a vision statement, it can be actually a spiritual mantra. What do I repeat? And samskara is what type of impressions are there in my mind. What I am doing, do they leave sattvic impressions or they leave rajasic impressions which make me more craving, more extroverted? So these 10 factors in detail you have in the chart, so don't worry, you can read through that properly. If I change these into sattva, the buddhi will become capable of doing this subtle discrimination, because jnana is the quality of sattva guna. And sattva guna, when it is increasing in the buddhi, then this person becomes more capable of doing vivek, this atma and atma vivek. Fourth method is, Shivananji used to say, constantly think about these four. Ephemeral nature of the world. Everything is perishing. 1 minute it is there, next minute it disappears. Some people also like that. You would have spoken to them few minutes back and suddenly you realize the person passed away, gone. So ephemeral nature of the world. Think about death again and again. That one day this body is going to die. One favorite exercise which I have done many times, and I make others also do many times, especially youngsters, is go and visit the cremation ground and take a selfie and post it on Facebook. Our final destination. Because when we actually go there, we can't take a selfie. People may take our photograph, but we can't take. So before that, only go take a selfie. You might say, what a weird thing to do. But it will create Vivek and Vairagya. Some of you, after going to Kumbh, have gone to Kashi Vishwanath. Manikarnika Ghat, you should go and see. 24 hours bodies are burning there. 24 hours. There is no break. Continuously the bodies are going on burning there, one by one by one. Harishchandra Ghat and Manikarnika Ghat. Okay. The more I think about death, the more my priorities will get reorganized. Because we think we have enough time, so we are doing a lot of time pass actually. Engaging in so much of unnecessary pride, prejudice, fights, everything. And people have apps on telephone for time pass, Yeah. One mosquito racket is there and one mosquito comes, they kill. Another mosquito comes, they kill it. That app is meant for that only. From different places, mosquitoes will keep coming and this will go on kill. If one becomes a spiritual seeker and wonders, where is the time? There's so much to read, so much to reflect, so much to meditate, do. But people have enough time. They go on watching some serials. Mindlessly going on. They're elongating the episodes and one is still watching because nothing else to do. If I really think here, time is very less. Death can come any moment. Nishwase nahi, Vishwasa. Any moment this breath which has gone out may not come back inside. It will stop. Body will drop. Did I realize the goal or not? That is Vivek. To use the time well. Now, practical example of this I'll tell you. America, when this happened, that September 11. This is a documented research. You can find on Google. So before that September 11 attacks, what was the priority of the Americans? Work, socializing, family, church. This is a priority order. After September 11, suddenly they realized life is so ephemeral. Anytime anything can happen. Their priority changed. What is the priority? Family, work, church, socializing. Because they realize that we are doing so much of work, we have not spent time with the family, we have not told them what we want to tell them. The more I think about death, the more my priorities in life get reorganized. And also more I prepare myself for that eventuality. Just by ignoring it, I'm not going to escape. So, ephemeral nature of the world, think about death, and think about the lives of saints. How did these people live their lives? They also have a perishable body like us, but how glorious was their life? Why? Because the fourth factor. They used it to realize God. So Shivanand used to say that we should think of these regularly. These four things. Ephemeral nature of life, God, death, lives of saints. The more I think about this, first two will give me the Vairagya, Vivek will give that Vairagya, and the next two will give me more and more focus towards what is the goal of life. So these are means to cultivate Vairagya. In your course material, the description of the quality is there. The methods to cultivate are not there. So you just added so that we can start cultivating, because these are the things are required to strengthen the qualification. Now, as I said, if Vivek is clear and strong, then it will result in Vairagya. You had a question in Vivek? You had a question about Vivek?
That's another question. Very tough view.
So second qualification is Vairagya. When Vivek becomes very strong and clear, the byproduct of Vivek is Vairagya. When I know that everything is ephemeral, will I run behind it? When the traveler in the desert knows that that's a mirage, will the traveler run behind it? Because the traveler has done the discrimination between the sand and the water. He knows that is sand, that's not water. Because he knows that is sand, his running has stopped. But somebody who doesn't know that, who has not done that Vivek, will run. So Vairagya means dispassion. And when we say dispassion, many people are scared of it. Because one thinks dispassion means leave everything and go away. Go to the house, go to the forest. Basic necessities of the body also one doesn't care for. Live somewhere in forest, torture the body. That is not dispassion. It's not about what you have or you don't. It's about the readiness to drop anything. What is not conducive to reach my goal, the ability to drop that, that is called Vairagya, basically. Simplest meaning, the deeper meaning we will see. So the example given there is, there was one renunciate who was traveling in a boat and he had some silver pots. And there was the other householder who was having mud pots. Both are going. And the householder tells this renunciate, but what kind of renunciate you are? You are having silver pots. You are supposed to have left all that. So the renunciate takes the silver pots and throws them away into the water. And he says, I can throw away these pots in the water. Can you throw yours? He says, no, how can I throw these pots? He says, that is renunciation. Whether you have the object or not is not. Having is one thing and possessing is something else. So I may have, Janak Maharaj was in the kingdom and he had a huge kingdom with him. But he was never possessive of that. He was never bound by that also.
About Vivek, you said about, you always use the example of childhood toys. So it is that age. So that time we are attached to it. Because you are grown up, we are not attached to it. But every age has some kind of attachment related to that. So Vivek in that becomes difficult more.
It becomes difficult, but that's why it is that at a certain age, when the goal of life becomes clear, then these things one rises above. Because that's where the discrimination is. In childhood toys, the discrimination is not there. And one goes through the childhood toys, then as the discrimination rises, one is able to let go. The example has a limitation there because one is not consciously thinking of something else. One is outgrowing it as per age. Yeah, after use. Same way in the world also. Nobody says give up the world without experiencing it. One has to go through the worldly experiences.
Experiencing it in that age, attachments are there only. I mean,
But that's why the knowledge and Vivek is required. No? Because while going through it, I have two choices. I can go through with attachments and just go through the pain of it. Or come to satsang, understand and then learn to be detached while going through it. If we wait over a period of time, by age this Vivek will come, it will take a long time. Because by that time I would have made my vasanas more strong, which will not allow me to detach so easily. So it is in the mindset. Anyway, there is a struggle. Whether you are in that stage or you are not in that stage, it is a struggle in the mind. But when the goal is very clear to me, as well as the devotion is there towards the Lord, then that becomes easy. What is important is the clarity of that goal. That what do I really seek? If we think that we are seeking only some material things, then it becomes challenging. But if I know that in and through those material things, I am actually seeking the experience of my own pure consciousness, so that is permanent happiness. Then my focus is not on getting things, my focus is on that Chitta Shuddhi and Chitta Ekagrata. So my household life can become a means for Chitta Shuddhi and Chitta Ekagrata, which is one of the methods of developing Vairagya. Dharmata Virati is said in Tulsi Ramayana. If I follow Dharma, I will get Vairagya. Or I can go through it with lot of anguish, pain, attachment, sorrow, and make a misery of my life. Experiences may remain the same, but my attitude towards it will change. And why will my attitude change? Because of satsang.
Now, I have a question on Vivek. Is Vivek changeless or it is not changed? And if Vivek changes because Vairagya is a byproduct of Vivek. And so Vairagya also changes in time.
Changeless is only Brahman. Vivek also has to change, because if Vivek doesn't change, how will you grow in Vivek? So as Vivek increases, Vairagya also increases. Both will ultimately lead to Brahman. Brahman alone is changeless.
Here, Vivek, though intellectually one may be driven that yes, this is a discrimination, while implementing or putting in the life, the force of the emotions sometimes either becomes repulsive or progressive. And accordingly, the Vairagya will progress.
So the emotion has to be very clearly understood, that what is temporary, if I intellectually have understood it is not enough, I must feel that everything is changing and it is not worth holding on to. Like Gautam Buddha, when he also saw what you and I see. He was living such a sheltered life, but once when he went out, his charioteer took him out. He told him, I want to see the world. The charioteer took him out. So as he was going out, what did he see? He saw somebody who was a hunchback. So he says, what happened to him? He says, he's an old man. And one day you will also become old. Then he saw somebody was being carried on the stretcher. He said, what happened to him? He said, he is a dead man. One day you will also die. And third, he saw a person who was suffering from leprosy. He said, what happened to him? Why is he suffering so much? He said, he is a sick man and you can also fall sick. Now these three statements, you can become old, you can die, you can fall sick. He actually felt it. He said, if this is what life is, what am I doing with my life? That feeling part, you see, from the head, the knowledge has to seep into the heart. I have to feel the temporary nature of life. Then that Vivek is complete. It's not only discrimination at the informative level, but actually I will feel. Then the Vairagya will also come. This is why they say Smashana Vairagya sometimes. Because when you go to Smashan, then it is feeling that this person I spent my whole life and now this person is dead. Gurudev took that pot of urn, his friend Shroff, Narendra Shroff, from Delhi to Rishikesh. 6 hours he sat in the train with that pot of urn in front of him. And he said, my friend who was so alive, up and kicking, is now in this pot. What did he say? Flesh and life are gone. Flesh and life are gone. From a drop of water to a pot of ash. That's the journey of life. Now that Vivek has actually come from the bhav, because it's not informative knowledge alone, that he has studied, but then he's seeing, then that Vivek has come here, what is this life? You actually see that body burning, nowadays they put in electric crematorium, you just think it goes from there, in few hours it comes out as a pot of ash. What is this body? 50, 70, 80 years we take care of this body, and suddenly one day it is what? Just ash. That feeling will come. That's why the more I think about those 4 aspects, the bhav will come. So along with the buddhi, the bhavana has to come. The Vivek then is a complete one, which will give rise to Vairagya. It is not just intellectually discriminating. At the same time, it's not a pessimistic thinking also that everything is perishable. Everything is perishable, but there is one imperishable. That is a saving grace. If nothing was imperishable, then there is a pain. But I have the choice that in this life I can choose that which is imperishable. So that comes from bhavana. So the more I do this vivek, the more this vairagya rises. And this vairagya is the ability to let go of all that which is ephemeral. Which will basic, if I say in a simpler terms, it is whatever is not conducive to reach my goal, I must have the capability to drop it. It is not going to lead me to my goal. And that is called vairagya. As far as spiritual life is concerned, because I want to realize the self within, the natural disinclination towards whatever worldly enjoyments are there, that's vairagya. Like the same example of childhood toys. There is no inclination now towards the childhood toys. One has reason about it. In that way, when one has seen through the pleasure, power, prestige game in the world and one has dropped it, that is vairagya. So it is necessary to see through it. It is not that one has to run away from it. The Upanishad's beautiful line is there. Mundaka Upanishad says, Pariksha lokan karma chitan. Pariksha means to examine closely. Not to just go through experiences of life in an unconscious way, but consciously that what did I invest in it? What did I get out of it? What do I really benefit in this life? Every experience when I go through consciously, then I realize that it is all changing. It's all, nothing can be held on to. So, Pariksha lokan karma chitan, brahmana, nirveda maya. If I actually go through every experience consciously, I will get vairagya. Why? Our problem is we are going through it not consciously. We are going through it with a lot of conditioning. If I actually go through it as it is, I will get vairagya. I'll give you a simple example. Anybody who has smoked for the first time or had a drink for the first time, how is it? One coughs, no? It may taste bitter also. But one will still engage in it. Why? Because of the conditioning. Because the conditioning is so strong of whatever I've seen around, that cigarette smoking is cool, drinking is cool, social drinking, this drinking, that drinking. If I put away the conditioning and look at it for itself, what it is exactly, I will get vairagya, I will drop it. I don't want this. Same way, if you look at the body, what is the body? It will come ahead as you see. The body is made up of dirt and filth only. But how much conditioning? So much of cosmetic products and beauty and this and that and smooth skin and whatever. And so then the mind is going through it through that conditioning. If I see for it for as it is, I will get vairagya. Now the difficulty is I am not able to see it as it is. So that's the challenge in spiritual life. When we say vivek has to awaken, the ability to see what is real and what is unreal. This body, when we are saying the reality of the body is what and what is the imagination. If you discriminate between that, the reality of the body is it is thinking machine. What I call it is a MMM. It is a manure making machine. Actually, if you think about it, such nice lovely cake if you eat, it passes through the body and when it comes out, what does it become? Manure, waste product. It produces waste. But what we look at the body as, such a lovely body. Source of enjoyment for myself, for enjoyment for others, and maximum pleasure I should derive out of this body. But it's actually Gurudev used to say it's a mobile manure. His body is 60 kg of mobile manure, he used to say that. So the fact is something else, but our conditioning, that is called moha, maya, conditioning, whatever we call it. If I look at it for its factual aspect, then I will get vairagya. What is this actually? Nothing. So that is why it is a natural disinclination. As we go through life, vairagya will come. If every experience I'm able to dissect properly, or I'm able to analyze it for its worth, what it is actually worth, we have hyped it up so much. Books like Bhajagovindam I should read. Vairagya Shatakam one should read. And reflect more upon that, then Vairagya will come. Because what is this life about otherwise? The inflated value we have given to so many things. Books like Bhajagovindam will deflate all that and bring us down to ground realities. Secular knowledge, PhD, double PhD, what all one can keep doing. But what will that knowledge do to me? Will it help me to overcome my own ignorance and sorrow? No. It can help me to earn a living. For that, whatever I need to do, that much I need to do. But life passes only in secular knowledge. So that Shankaracharya ji says, Bhaju Govindam, Bhaju Govindam. Samprapte san nahi te kale, nahi nahi rakshati, Ukraine karane. All my knowledge will not help me to extend this body and its life by even 1 minute. And what is going to come with me is bhakti, is jnana, is karma, my dharma. That did I pay attention to or not? So what is the way to go through life? When I go through life, if I go through it with this attitude, then let me see for it what is my experience. Then one will be able to develop Vairagya faster. It takes more time because of our own conditionings and the surroundings. The conditionings are very powerful. They make us feel certain way. So that's why in the Mundaka Upanishad we said, Pariksha Lokan. One has to examine, and not only human life or in this world. Pariksha Lokan meaning that seeker has analyzed life in all the 14 realms. He says everywhere in this world, in this creation, whatever you do, it is temporary. So he says he has examined very carefully, studied the Veda, understood it, reflected upon it, gone through the experiences of daily life, Pariksha Lokan, Karma Chitan, Nirveda Maya, Nastya Krita Kritina. There is no permanent happiness from this temporary world. That firm conviction that person has got. So what did that person do as a result? Tadvijnanartham Saguru Mevapi Gaccheti. To know that Supreme, that person went to the Guru. How did he go to the Guru? Samit Panihi. Took dry twigs, bundled them up, put them on the head and went to the teacher. That's the traditional way to go to the teacher. What does that mean? I have come here with a burning intellect, with a burning desire to know the truth. Like these twigs, if you put in the fire, immediately they will catch fire. He says, I have come with that intense attitude. Not that, I have some worldly desires also. I want moksha also. Whatever you can give in whichever time, I'll take it. Burning desire. He came with that. And to the Guru who is Shrotriya and Brahmanishta, who is realized and who is well versed in the scriptures. So that is the beautiful aspect. So Vairagya comes. If I ask you what is the success of Grihastha life, what will you say? Success of Grihastha life is what?
Silence.
Children.
Keeping quiet.
That is one aspect. But that means what? Those who don't have children don't have success. Somebody else said something else.
Keeping quiet.
Keep him quiet. Realize its impermanence. Success of Grihastha life is Vairagya and Bhakti. Apart from whatever else, families, lineage continues and they are settled and my duties I have to do towards them. That is one part. No denial of that. But really speaking, if I have lived a Grihastha life properly, Vairagya and Bhakti will come. That there is nothing worth in this world. Nothing. As long as I think that there is some value in the world, there is some meaning in the world, it is all meaningless. When I realize that there is no meaning here, then I know the truth. There's nothing. It's all illusion only. And you cannot grasp an illusion. So that feeling is called Vairagya. When one has understood very clearly that I have gone through everything, there's nothing more left to be seen. It's all temporary only. I turn my mind. That's why they gave us 4 stages of life. Brahmacharya 25 years, Grahastha for how many years? How many years? How many years? I am telling you to repeat because it should go in the mind. Grahastha is only for 25 years. I should do Anaprastha and then Sannyas. Otherwise, once a Grahastha, I am always a Grahastha. 50 years, after that one has to start turning. Enough of worldly responsibilities. You say, no, but today say 50 years you cannot turn. Okay, turn at 60. Turn at 70. People are still not turning. We still hold on the key of the house. What is that? Business. I still have to go. What will I hold on to? That house is not going to come with me, not that money, nothing. What will come with me? Turn to that. So at the end of my Grihastha life, if Vairagya Bhavana has not come, that means I have not lived Grihastha optimally. Bhakti has to come, that Bhagwan alone is real. Vairagya and Bhakti will go together. So the result of Vivek is this Vairagya, that is born out of this understanding that everything is temporary. And not only temporary, it is painful also. See, the pain part of it, we escape from it and get into some pleasure seeking, and that's why we don't get Vairagya. One of the biggest problems which does not allow me to cultivate Vairagya is love for pleasure and comfort. Aram. That's why we say in Hindi, Aram is Aram. For a spiritual seeker, Aram is like that. Gurudev said, comfort comes as a guest, lingers on to become the host, and then completely enslaves us. It's a very powerful quote. Comfort comes as a guest. Little bit only. Thoda sa. And after that it starts. Example, early morning sleep. We want to sleep only 10 minutes. And the snooze button is kept also like that. After 10 minutes it will again ring. But when it again rings, what do? Again put it, again sleep. By the time it gets over, what happens? 1 hour gone. 10 minutes. 1 hour gone. It's like that. Comfort comes as a guest. It's small thing. 10 sleeps. So, why do I need Vairagya? Without Vairagya, mind cannot turn within. Because the mind will run outside only. It has cravings. It has sense attachments. So, what are the limitations of worldly pleasure? I should think about that. Again and again. That they have a beginning and an end. Definitely they are riddled with pain. In fact, Gautam Buddha said every pleasure is pain in disguise. You may say, what a pessimistic statement to make. Every pleasure is pain in disguise. You think about it. It is pain in disguise because it dissipates one's energy as well as leaves a craving. And because it dissipates my energy and leaves a craving, I cannot even enjoy it as it is. So much effort, thought, one thinks, Example, I want to eat an ice cream. Ice cream. The mind goes on thinking. And finally, when I'm eating the ice cream, for the first few minutes or seconds, it is there with the ice cream. After that, talking to somebody, mind is gone somewhere, something is happening. Over. Mind is not even on that. So I didn't enjoy the ice cream properly. And so after a few days, what happens? Again, the craving starts. I must have ice cream. It will keep on having this pleasure and memory cycle keeps going on and on and on. And sometimes to enjoy a certain type of pleasure, a certain price has to be paid. And to pay that price, I have to cut the throat of so many people. So how is it not pain in disguise? Even the simplest of pleasures will be pain in disguise considering absolute self. Has the deep sleep enjoyment ever given you pain?
No.
Anybody's deep sleep experience, has it been painful? Dream can be painful. Deep sleep, you just think about it. Did you enjoy? Did you have any objects there? Was the world there? Was any effort being put? No. It is our own nature. Compared to that state of experience of happiness, effortless happiness, all this is a pain or not? How much mehnat to do to get this much?
That is thoughtlessness.
That's a different generation of the example. But the same thing we experience in samadhi, right? Consciously. That is just an example to make us aware that effortless happiness is our nature. Compared to that, with so much of effort, temporary pleasure if I get, is it not pain in disguise? So the more I think about that, what is the temporary pleasure? That's another exercise you can do this whole week. Whenever you're eating something, enjoying something, watching something, browsing on the phone, think. You may say, but it will spoil my experience from you. What is this? Vairagya comes like that. To see something as it is, then Vairagya will come. And then the joy of Vairagya, person who lives in Vairagya, a person who lives in freedom. Vairagya meva abhayam, it is said. Bhartrihari, the great king, he said that. He said, Bhoge roga bhayam. If I keep enjoying, I have a fear of disease. Kule chuti bhayam. If I belong to a great family, I fear fall. Vitte nripalat bhayam. If I have a lot of money, then I'm scared of whom? Income tax. If I'm beautiful, rupe jaraya bhayam. If I'm beautiful, I am scared of one pimple, one wrinkle, one white hair. Like that, he gives many examples. Shastre Vadi Bhayam. If you have knowledge, then you are scared of being defeated by an opponent in debate. He says everything in this world is filled with fear. Sarvam Vastu Bhayanvitam Bhuvi. Dranam Vairagyameva Bhayam. Only Vairagya is fearlessness. So it's a state worth cultivating.
Only senses are responsible for this.
No, it is responsible. So Shama Dhamma, all that will come. There is no doubt. But ultimately it is my will. Senses themselves, what will they do? Because if senses alone were responsible, the Mahatmas cannot control their senses. No doubt senses are created extrovert. There is no doubt. But Bhagavan has given us buddhi, that's why that Vivek is the first quality. Senses are extrovert. And the desire in the mind rises for sense objects. And the senses want to contact the sense objects. But if Vivek is done properly, then it works. That's why the first quality is most important. More and more Vivek has to be done. So we'll continue about this in the next class. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate Om Shanti 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 Hari Om Shri Guru Namah Hari Om